I'm Margot Reyes, 28, a combat medic with the U.S. Army. When I got the call about the White House ceremony, my hands trembled. For years, my family had dismissed my military career as worthless. They laughed at my uniform, ignored my medals, and called me the family disappointment. Little did they know about the classified mission that changed everything. They were about to learn the truth from the most powerful man in the world. Before I tell you how the President of the United States changed everything, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button. My story might just change how you see the people in uniform around you. I grew up in a stately brownstone in Philadelphia, where success was measured in Ivy League admissions and prestigious publications. My father, Dr. Julian Reyes, was a celebrated history professor at a renowned university, a man who lived in the intellectual glories of ancient civilizations. My mother, Dr. Alina Reyes, was a prominent art historian, her world one of refined aesthetics and cultural significance. My older brother, Mateo, followed their path perfectly, graduating from Wharton before joining a high-powered investment firm on Wall Street. The Reyes family had a reputation to uphold, and everyone played their part. Everyone except me. From my earliest memories, I was expected to pursue medicine at an elite university. My parents had it all mapped out. They enrolled me in science camps every summer, hired tutors to ensure perfect grades, and introduced me to their colleagues' children who were already on the right path. My bedroom walls were covered not with posters of bands, but with diagrams of the human circulatory system and charts of organic compounds. But something else captured my imagination. When I was 9 years old, my grandfather, my dad's father, who had served as a combat medic in World War II, came to live with us. While my parents rarely spoke of his service, preferring to highlight his later career as a hospital administrator, I was fascinated by the few stories he shared when we were alone. He told me he wasn't saving the world in some fancy research lab, Margot. He was saving it one soldier at a time, right there in the mud and blood. He showed me his medic badge once, explaining how he treated wounded men under fire in Italy. That badge meant more to me than all the academic awards in our family's display cabinet. In high school, I was a good student, but not the star my parents expected. I maintained a solid B+ average while excelling in athletics, particularly long-distance running. My guidance counselor said I could aim for good schools, maybe not Penn or Princeton, but respectable institutions with strong pre-med programs. My parents, however, couldn't hide their disappointment at my SAT scores. Mateo had near-perfect scores. My mother reminded me constantly he had his pick of schools. When college application season arrived, I dutifully applied to my parents' chosen list. The rejection letters came one by one. I was waitlisted at 2 and accepted at 3 less prestigious universities. My parents' disappointment was palpable. "We'll make it work," my father said with a sigh that conveyed exactly how much of a failure he considered me. "A state school for undergrad, then maybe you can transfer somewhere better." That spring, a military recruiter visited our high school. While my classmates ignored the Army table, I found myself drawn to it. The recruiter, a woman named Sergeant Isabella Cruz, spoke about serving with purpose, about medical roles in the military, about becoming part of something bigger than yourself. For the first time, I saw a path that called to me. At 19, after one miserable semester at the state university my parents had reluctantly accepted, I made my decision. I enlisted in the United States Army with a specialty track for combat medicine. When I told my family over dinner, the reaction was worse than I'd imagined. "The military," my father nearly choked on his wine, "is for people who can't make it elsewhere." "Is that what you think of yourself, Margot?" My mother covered her face with her hands, crying, "Where did we go wrong with you? We gave you every opportunity." But it was my brother Mateo's response that cut deepest. He laughed, an actual condescending laugh. "Playing soldier, Margot? Really? You know they'll just stick you in some office filing papers, right? This isn't some movie where you'll be saving lives on the battlefield. I'm going to be a combat medic," I said firmly, though my voice shook. "Like Grandpa." "Your grandfather became something respectable after the war," my father countered. He didn't waste his potential. That night, I sat on my childhood bed, looking at the acceptance letter from the university and my enlistment papers. By morning, my decision was firm. 2 weeks later, I was on a bus to basic training, my parents' disapproval and my brother's mockery following me like shadows. Basic training tested me in ways I'd never imagined. The physical demands were intense, but the mental challenges were even greater. For the first time in my life, I wasn't being measured against my brilliant family, but against my own potential. Drill sergeants didn't care about my SAT scores or my family's academic pedigree. They cared about my determination, my teamwork, my ability to perform under pressure. And I thrived. I finished near the top of my basic training class and moved on to advanced individual training for combat medicine. There, I found my calling. The instructors noticed my focus and dedication. One told me, "Reyes, you've got the hands and the head for this work. More importantly, you've got the heart." When I came home for my first Christmas in uniform, I thought things might be different. I had graduated with honors from my training programs. I had ribbons on my chest and pride in my posture. But nothing had changed. "When will you be done playing dress-up?" my mother asked as I helped her prepare dinner. "The uniform looks cute," my brother said with a smirk, "but let's be honest, you're probably just handing out aspirin at some clinic." They asked no questions about my training, showed no interest in what I'd learned or accomplished. My father changed the subject every time I mentioned the Army. By the time I returned to base, I understood that my family would never see value in the path I'd chosen. I would have to find that validation elsewhere. Upon completing my medical training, I was assigned to the 82nd Airborne Division and soon received orders for Afghanistan. Before deployment, I called my parents, hoping they might show some concern or support. "Afghanistan," my mother said, her voice flat. "I suppose that was inevitable with your career choice." "Just keep your head down," my father added. "No heroics. There was no 'be safe' or 'we're proud of you.' No care packages followed me overseas, no supportive letters arrived while my fellow soldiers received mail from home. But in Afghanistan, I found a different kind of family. My squad became the support system I never had. We shared our fears during long nights on guard duty and protected each other during missions outside the wire. Sergeant Anya Petrova, our squad leader, became the mentor I'd always craved. 3 months into my deployment, our convoy hit an improvised explosive device. The explosion tossed the lead Humvee, seriously wounding 2 soldiers inside. Without hesitation, I ran to the smoking wreckage, my medical bag clutched against my chest. Enemy fire crackled around us as I dragged Specialist Daniel Chen from the vehicle and began treatment. His femoral artery was severed, blood pulsing onto the dusty road. "Stay with me, Chen," I urged as I applied a combat tourniquet and started an IV under fire. The medevac helicopter arrived 14 minutes later, 14 minutes during which I kept him alive through manual pressure, fluids, and sheer determination. Captain Evan Grant witnessed my actions that day. "Reyes, you have ice in your veins," he told me afterward. "Chen would be dead if not for you." Word of the incident traveled up the chain of command. I received an Army Commendation Medal with V device for valor. When I called home to share the news, my mother responded, "That's nice, dear. Did you hear Mateo made vice president at his firm?" As months passed, I grew into my role. I treated everything from battle wounds to common illnesses, earning respect from infantry soldiers who typically viewed support personnel with skepticism. I was promoted to sergeant ahead of schedule. During my 18-month deployment, I saved 11 lives in direct combat situations. When my brother Mateo graduated from business school during my deployment, my parents threw an elaborate party. They flew me home on leave for the occasion, seemingly more to maintain appearances than from any desire to see me. At the party, I stood awkwardly in a corner as relatives and family friends fawned over Mateo. My dress uniform drew curious glances but few questions. Later that evening, my mother noticed the ribbons on my uniform. "What are those colorful things for?" she asked, as if they were costume jewelry. "This one is for combat medical service," I explained. "This is my commendation medal with valor device." "Fascinating," she interrupted, clearly uninterested. "Have you met your cousin Sophia? She just got a research fellowship at Johns Hopkins. Now that's a proper medical career." I returned to my unit the next day, the emotional distance between my family and me growing wider than the physical miles. My second deployment loomed, this time to a particularly volatile region. The night before departing, I made one last attempt to connect with my family. I called home, hoping for some word of encouragement. "We're about to deploy to a pretty dangerous area," I said carefully. I just wanted to talk before we ship out. Try not to play hero over there, my father replied. The real heroes are the ones who come home and do something meaningful with their lives. I should go, I said, fighting back tears. We have an early start tomorrow. Email when you can, my mother said perfunctorily. Oh, and your brother's engagement party is next month. We'll send pictures. As I hung up, I realized I was truly on my own. 6 months into my second deployment, I was unexpectedly transferred to a special operations medical support team. My commanding officer had recommended me based on my performance in several high-pressure situations. The selection process was rigorous. This isn't standard combat medicine, Sergeant Reyes, Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Thorne explained during my briefing. You'll be operating with small teams in high-risk environments with minimal support. The missions are classified, and the margin for error is 0. On April 15th, our team received intelligence about American hostages being held in a remote mountain compound. 3 aid workers had been captured, and intelligence suggested they would be executed on camera within 48 hours. Our 12-person team, including myself as the only medic, was tasked with their extraction. We launched just after midnight, 2 Black Hawk helicopters cutting through the moonless night. 20 minutes from the target, disaster struck. Warning systems blared as the lead helicopter took ground fire. The pilot, Major Evelyn Reed, fought to maintain control as hydraulic systems failed. I braced as the helicopter spiraled downward, making a hard emergency landing in a narrow valley. The impact threw me against the cabin wall. When my vision cleared, I saw smoke filling the cabin and heard the groans of injured personnel. Training took over. I moved to the cockpit where Major Reed was slumped over the controls, blood streaming from a head wound. The co-pilot had a compound fracture of his left arm. We need to move, Captain Leo Vance, our team leader, shouted. Hostiles are converging on our position. I stabilized Major Reed's neck while we extracted her from the cockpit. As gunfire erupted around us, I helped drag both pilots to defensive positions. The second helo can't land, Vance reported. Too much enemy fire. We're on our own. Within minutes, we were surrounded. I divided my attention between returning fire and monitoring the injured pilots. When a specialist took a bullet to his thigh, I crawled through the firefight to reach him, enemy rounds kicking up dirt inches from us as I worked. For 4 hours, we held our position. When a master sergeant was hit in the chest, the bullet narrowly missing his heart, I performed an emergency needle decompression for his collapsed lung, using a penlight clenched between my teeth to see. Reyes, Captain Vance called out, we need coordinates for an airstrike. You're the only one with a line of sight to the enemy's main position. I crawled to the edge of our defensive perimeter, exposing myself to enemy fire. A bullet grazed my helmet as I called in precise coordinates over the radio. Minutes later, an explosion silenced half the enemy positions. As night gave way to dawn, our situation deteriorated. Major Reed's condition was worsening. When enemy fighters flanked our position, a grenade exploded near me, sending shrapnel into my left leg. The pain was immediate and intense. Sergeant Victor Gallo was critically wounded in the same blast. Despite my injury, I dragged him 20 yards to better cover, applied a chest seal to his sucking wound, and started an IV while using my body to shield him from incoming fire. Stay with me, Gallo, I urged. Your kids need you to fight. By noon, enemy reinforcements had arrived. Captain Vance made the difficult decision to split our team. Reyes, you take the 4 most wounded and head east toward that ridgeline. The rest of us will create a diversion. I organized the evacuation, creating improvised stretchers for Major Reed and Sergeant Gallo. My leg throbbed with every step as I led our small group through rugged terrain. 48 hours after the crash, we reached the extraction point. The relief I felt seeing the helicopter approach was indescribable. Back at base, I learned the remainder of our team had been extracted hours after us. The mission had been aborted. What I didn't know then was that the intelligence we gathered, specifically information I had radioed, would prove crucial in a subsequent rescue operation that freed not only our original targets but 24 additional hostages. My injury earned me a Purple Heart, but the full story remained classified. When I called home from the hospital, my family seemed more inconvenienced than concerned. So will this affect your contract with the Army? My father asked. Perhaps it's a sign you should consider a different direction. It's just a leg wound, I replied, too tired to feel the hurt. I'll be back with my unit in a few weeks. The physical wound healed, but the emotional scars, the guilt over Sergeant Gallo, who didn't survive despite my efforts, were slower to fade. After 3 months of rehabilitation, I was granted 30 days of medical leave. I approached my family visit with a mixture of hope and dread. Some childish part of me still craved their recognition. My mother had organized a dinner to celebrate Mateo's engagement to Clara, a corporate lawyer, apparently forgetting I was arriving the same day. "Oh, Margot," she said when I appeared at the door, my uniform pressed, my Purple Heart prominent. "We weren't expecting you until tomorrow." The dinner was excruciating. My parents and brother dominated the conversation with stories about Mateo's successes. When Clara noticed my Purple Heart and asked about it, my mother actually rolled her eyes. "She got a minor injury during some training exercise," she said. "The military gives out medals for everything these days." "It wasn't a training exercise," I corrected, my voice tight. "And the Purple Heart is for wounds received in combat against enemy forces." "Combat," my brother scoffed. "Come on, Margot, you're a glorified nurse. You probably tripped over a tent stake." Something inside me snapped. "I was wounded by enemy fire while treating injured soldiers," I said quietly. "I spent 48 hours evading enemy combatants while keeping 4 critically wounded teammates alive. One of them died in my arms." The table fell silent. "Well, if you had gone to medical school like we wanted," my father said finally, "you could be saving lives in a proper hospital instead of playing war hero." "Playing?" The word hung in the air. "You think I'm playing?" Mateo smirked, saying, "We all know you enlisted because you couldn't hack it academically." I stood up slowly, my hands flat on the table. "In the past 5 years, I've saved more lives than I can count. I've performed emergency procedures under enemy fire that most hospital doctors will never attempt. I've earned the respect of some of the most elite soldiers in our military. And not once have any of you asked me about what I actually do." My mother looked uncomfortable, saying, "We just worry you're wasting your potential." "Do you even tell your friends what I do?" I asked suddenly. "Or am I such a disappointment that you pretend I don't exist?" The flicker in my father's eyes told me everything. He stiffly replied that the military is a perfectly respectable temporary career, but they always expected more from me. Expected more? I laughed bitterly. "I've been shot at, blown up, and operated on dying men with nothing but basic supplies. I've held soldiers' hands as they took their last breaths. What exactly were you expecting from me that would be more than that?" "A real career," my father snapped. "A respectable position in society, not playing soldier in the desert. You've always been the family disappointment, Margot. The military was just your way of running from that fact." I walked out without another word. In my rental car, I finally allowed myself to break down. My phone rang. It was Staff Sergeant Sofia Garcia, my closest friend from my unit. "Hey, Reyes, just checking in. How's the family reunion going?" I could only manage choked sobs. "I'm on my way," she said immediately. "Text me the address. Don't move." 2 hours later, Sophia arrived at the hotel where I'd checked in. She sat with me through the night as I finally talked about everything. "Your worth isn't determined by people who don't understand what you do," she told me fiercely. "It's determined by the lives you've saved." My reassignment came through quicker than expected. Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. At Walter Reed, I found renewed purpose working with the wounded warriors. They understood. Meanwhile, my former teammates from the Special Operations Unit had been sharing stories of my actions. Lieutenant Colonel Thorne had submitted a detailed account of my performance to higher command. The intelligence I gathered had indeed led to a massive success. 6 months after my transfer, I received a cryptic call from the Pentagon. "Sergeant Reyes," a formal voice said, "please report to the office of the Secretary of the Army at 900 tomorrow. Dress uniform required." I was ushered into a private office where a brigadier general waited alongside a civilian. "I'm General Samuel Pierce," the general began. "This is Mr. David Chen from the White House Military Office." Mr. Chen explained that the actions I took during Operation Silent Retrieval have been reviewed at the highest levels. General Pierce slid a folder across the desk. "You are being awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for extraordinary heroism. The President himself will present the medal in a ceremony next week." I stared at the document, unable to process his words. The Distinguished Service Cross, second only to the Medal of Honor. There must be some mistake, I managed. No mistake, Sergeant General Pierce said firmly. The intelligence you provided while wounded and under fire led directly to the rescue of 27 hostages and the prevention of 3 planned terrorist attacks on U.S. soil. 15 lives were saved by your direct medical intervention. After hours of debate, I sent a simple text to my parents. I'm receiving a Distinguished Service Cross from the President at the White House next Thursday. You're welcome to attend. My mother's response came hours later. We'll check our schedules. Your father has a faculty meeting that might conflict. Eventually, they confirmed they would attend. The day of the ceremony arrived. In the White House East Room, I saw my family enter and take seats near the back, my father checking his watch. When my turn came, I stood at attention as the military aide read the citation. Sergeant Margot Reyes distinguished herself by exceptionally valorous conduct. When her helicopter was shot down in hostile territory, Sergeant Reyes, despite being wounded by shrapnel, provided life-saving care to multiple casualties while under direct enemy fire. As the citation continued, I saw my family's expressions change from polite attention to shock. Sergeant Reyes's actions directly saved the lives of 15 U.S. service members. Additionally, intelligence she provided while under fire was instrumental in a subsequent operation that rescued 27 hostages and prevented planned terrorist attacks on U.S. soil. The President stood, a rare departure from protocol. He looked directly at me as he spoke. The citation doesn't tell the whole story. Sergeant Reyes didn't save just her team. She made possible the rescue of innocent civilians. She helped prevent attacks that would have taken American lives on our own soil. Today we recognize her extraordinary courage. He offered a formal salute before placing the medal around my neck. Sergeant Margot Reyes, he said, his voice carrying through the silent room, you saved more American lives than anyone will ever fully know. The weight of the medal felt surreal. The President shook my hand, then leaned closer to speak privately. My nephew was one of those aid workers, he said quietly. Our family owes you a debt we can never repay. I blinked back tears as I returned to my position, the room erupting in applause. Everyone was standing except my stunned family, who seemed frozen in their seats. At the reception, high-ranking officers offered congratulations. A group of civilians approached. Sergeant Reyes, these are some of the aid workers you helped rescue, a State Department official explained. A woman with kind eyes embraced me tightly. They told us what you did, she whispered. I have a 5-year-old daughter who still has her mother because of you. Through the crowd, I spotted my family standing awkwardly near the wall. They approached hesitantly. Margot, my father began, his voice lacking its usual authority that was quite a ceremony. Thank you for coming, I replied formally. We had no idea, my mother said, her voice small. You never asked, I responded simply. My brother cleared his throat. Those things they said you did, that was real. Before I could answer, Captain Vance, my former team leader, appeared at my side. Reyes was the best combat medic I've ever worked with, he said. When we were surrounded, she crawled across open ground to treat a wounded soldier, shrapnel in her own leg. My family stared speechless. Later, as the event wound down, my brother approached. Margot, I owe you an apology. I've been arrogant and dismissive. I had no idea what you've really been doing. No, you didn't, I agreed. You never bothered to find out. He nodded. Can we start over? Before I could respond, my mother joined us, tears in her eyes. When they described what happened to your helicopter, I couldn't breathe, thinking about how close we came to losing you. I tried to tell you about being wounded, I reminded her gently. You said I probably tripped over a tent stake. She flinched. We've been terrible, haven't we? My father approached last. I saw how those generals spoke to you, he said quietly, the respect in their eyes. I've been in academia for 40 years and never earned that kind of respect. As I walked away with Sophia to join my team for a real celebration, my phone buzzed with messages from my family. I set it aside. Tonight belonged to the people who had recognized my worth long before a presidential ceremony. 6 months later, I was an instructor at the Army Medical Department Center. My family and I began a slow, uncomfortable rebuilding. My father visited me at the base, asking questions and listening. I've been arrogant, he admitted. My mother sent care packages, including my grandfather's military photo and medals. Your grandfather would have been so proud, her note read. My brother began volunteering with a veterans' legal aid program. During a family therapy session, my parents finally explained. I was terrified from the moment you enlisted, my mother confessed. My father admitted his own father came back from the war haunted, and he'd been trying to protect me from that pain. You couldn't have protected me, I said gently, but you could have supported me. That Thanksgiving, for the first time, my medals were displayed alongside Mateo's degree and my father's academic awards. My father explained the significance of the Distinguished Service Cross to a family friend with unmistakable pride. These gestures were validating, but I knew my worth had never depended on them. The president's words hadn't made me valuable. They had merely illuminated the value that was already there. One evening at the training center, a young recruit approached me. "Sergeant Reyes, I joined because of the news stories about you. I wanted to make that kind of difference. The medals don't make the medic," I told her. "It's the willingness to run toward the wounded when everyone else is running away. It's doing your job even when no one is watching. Find your purpose. The recognition may come or it may not, but the lives you save, that's what matters." As I spoke, I realized I was finally free. The president's words changed how my family saw me, but the truth was, I'd already saved myself long before he said I saved others. What about you? Have you ever had your worth questioned by those who should have valued you most? Have you found validation from unexpected sources? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this journey resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share this video. Thank you for listening.